He's also, Keir Starmer that is, he could be facing a revolt from his own MPs. This is over something entirely different. This is over plans to house asylum seekers in newly built council homes. These include local areas such as Brighton and Hackney, and several Labor MPs are now pressuring the Prime Minister not to go ahead with this plan, Esther.
Yes, I mean, the government has denied that this new accommodation will be used to house asylum seekers. And we know that council housing is in very short supply in England. 1 in 5 people actually lives in a council home in the UK or in England. But the problem is Keir Starmer is like the king of U-turns. I mean, to date, he has, I think, about 15 U-turns that his government has done. So the problem is in the fact that he's denying that any of this accommodation will go to asylum seekers, is the fact that it's very plausible. And one underhanded way that the government is trying to get around housing asylum seekers is using HMOs, which is basically multiple occupancy homes, on people's streets. So not isolated in hotels or in army barracks. I mean, just the kind of run-of-the-mill house that you wouldn't suspect next to a school or a hospital is being used to house often what is like dozens of men that have just arrived into the country illegally via a small boat. And this is one of the things that we saw kick off the riots last summer with the Epping Bell Hotel, where a man who'd arrived by a boat earlier, I think 2 weeks earlier, had been charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in that town. So I think the big problem for Keir Starmer is not what he's saying. It's the fact that he's lost all credibility, that his own MPs just don't believe him.
He absolutely has. Let's look at the polls. First, before we get to Keir Starmer, let's talk about Reform and how it's doing in the polls. A recent Ipsos political monitor found that Reform UK maintains an 8-point lead over Labor, but this is down from November last year. And Labor continue to lose their 2024 voters to a mix of parties. And on Keir Starmer, only 15% are satisfied with the way that Keir Starmer is doing his job as Prime Minister. Now, I think that comes as a shock to absolutely no one. I mean, the fact that there is 15% is the shocking part in this, Esther. What do you make of what the polls are saying? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Conservative Party has been gaining ground as Kemi Badenoch has, had her profile risen, particularly over this Epstein scandal, which is quite the natural to and fro of government. But I think if you poll people again this week, it's probably going to swing back to Reform, especially after the high-profile defections that we've seen with Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, who seem to be Conservatives that are more have more in common with Reform than with the Conservative Party. They tend to be more hardline Conservatives. As for the Labour Party, I think they can see that the writing is on the wall. The big test actually now is the May 7th local council elections, because the Labour Party is really expecting a complete bloodbath. And if anyone had to put their money on when Keir Starmer's premiership, it would probably be completely toast. It would be after the May 7th local council elections, particularly in Wales and Scotland, where the Labour Party is predicted to get completely thrashed.
Okay, well, Esther, I want to ask you how safe London is at the moment, because according to some media outlets, we're being told, don't believe the violent videos that we're seeing all the time online, don't believe the high crime rates, and don't believe the huge number of people who are packing up their bags and fleeing London. According to The Economist, London is far safer than violent viral videos will have you believe. It's interesting being here in Sydney, Australia, reading that, and then at the same time also seeing news articles that people like Tom Cruise, they're packing up, they're fleeing London. Tom Cruise is leaving his London apartment reportedly just after a shop near him was robbed, Esther.
Yes, I mean, what they're basically saying is close one eye and squint the other, and then put on sunglasses, and then you can pretend that London is what it is. I mean, other than from personal experience, having my friend's phone stolen on Oxford Street only a few months ago, seeing people literally being questioned by the police randomly as I was taking a walk with my friend in Knightsbridge, because some armed robbers decided to smash up, I think it was a Chanel shop, and steal whatever they could get their hands on. And the police decided to question me because I look like an armed robber, apparently. Look, the reality is the kinds of people that come up with these sorts of statements do not live in London, or live in such a leafy part of London that actually when they call the police, they turn up. If you go outside of, even outside of sort of the central areas, the data is very clear, and it's very hard to mask it in any other way. The fact is, knife crime is up. It's been up by over 50% since Keir Starmer since Sadiq Khan became London mayor. Phone thefts are through the roof, to the point where the police are not even doing anything about it. They take a crime reference number for insurance purposes and then get you on your merry way. Sexual assault. I mean, there's, I believe, a rape every few hours in London, and that's something that the Metropolitan Police again can't talk away or try to say, oh, but it's not that bad, because rape is never that bad, or some sort of ridiculous excuse that they could come up with. The reality is London is deteriorating fast. The number of non-doms that you see leaving London isn't just because of the Chancellor's poor tax plans. It's because why would you, a wealthy person, live in a major city where you're not safe? You can't wear any of your luxury jewelry. A man was stabbed to death last year for his Rolex watch. A man and a father of two who just visited London with his children. I mean, where is the room to hide and to paint the picture as something that it's not? So this is the kind of things that infuriates people, because they just think that the electorate is so adrift from the people that are actually running the country, and these are the kinds of things that radicalize them.
It's just so sad. It is so shocking. And then it's kind of infuriating reading pieces like that in the media where they're just pretending what is happening in London, it just does not exist. I want to talk to you about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the Epstein files. Of course, the newly released Epstein files has just raised more questions around Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Skynews.com.au is reporting that King Charles is furious with Keir Starmer after Keir Starmer joined calls for Andrew to testify to Congress. Look, the Andrew allegations, they're incredibly damaging to the royal family. They are. But Keir Starmer, I suppose he's really put in his place when you look at the pecking order of importance in the UK. Esther, what do you make of this story?
I mean, he made a statement about Prince Andrew having to go to the US to testify before Congress just as he was getting off a plane from China. So his excuse is that, he's been insulated for the last 4 days. Remember his trip to China, this country that we should be having closer ties with, that he trusts so much. Him and his entire team had to take burner phones and laptops because they were scared of being spied upon. But he made this remark that infuriated the king off the cuff, because he hadn't actually consulted the palace. And while the Buckingham Palace has tried to do what it can do to minimize the furore around Prince Andrew and his association, or the prince formerly known as Andrew, and his association with Jeffrey Epstein, this has been very much a coordinated effort between Buckingham Palace and number 10 Downing Street. And so for Keir Starmer to go off the record and say, Prince Andrew should go to the US to testify before Congress, well, first of all, he can't be compelled to do so, which is actually what Keir Starmer said a few months before. And secondly, it's completely inappropriate for him to do that and to basically take a decision on behalf of the royal family without the king's explicit permission. You have to remember that it's King Charles that basically saved his relationship with Donald Trump. Without the royal family, Donald Trump doesn't have time for Keir Starmer, and certainly not Peter Mandelson, who was not highly regarded amongst sort of Republican top brass. So this is something that he will regret, and I'm sure the king will take him to task on that. But just even raising that and giving it life, and having Lib Dem politicians say, yes, actually, he should go to America, is going to put a lot of pressure on Buckingham Palace that they really don't need at the moment. Already, they had to smuggle Prince Andrew out of his home under the cover of darkness because they're so embarrassed by him. I'm sure at some point they'll say they're going to ship him to a village in India or something just to really get rid of him. But it's not helpful for the royal family to have these interventions by a prime minister who's basically a dead man walking.
Well, finally, I have to talk to you about the Beckhams. It appears an Oprah Winfrey sit-down interview could possibly be on the cards for Brooklyn Beckham, following reports that Meghan Markle has been offering herself as a mentor following this family breakup bombshell. The 26-year-old has apparently been receiving support from the Duchess of Sussex since he posted on Instagram about his family and the breakdown. Esther, is this a good idea for Brooklyn Beckham to be getting advice from Meghan Markle?
Well, obviously not. And, usually these kinds of kind of insider scoops are usually quite dubious at the best of times. However, there is a form for this to actually have some credibility. We do remember that the Beckhams were actually at Prince Harry and Meghan's wedding. They grew closer to the couple after they were married because of David Beckham's kind of acquaintance with Prince Harry, that when he used to run into him during sort of royal engagements and all of that, but it wasn't really a close friendship. And then we find out a few years later that the couple had fallen out, allegedly because the Sussexes didn't trust the Beckhams and they felt like they were the source of leaks about their private life, so they cut off that relationship. There is some form that Meghan Markle might see herself in Brooklyn Beckham, with the slight exception that her parents are not bazillionaires and that, her mother was not a Spice Girl, but I'm sure that makes no difference to Meghan Markle. Obviously, it would be a mistake for Brooklyn Beckham to entertain any more media around his family, especially because the Beckhams are not amateurs. They're not like the royal family that will say recollections may vary and just keep a dignified silence about this. The Beckhams are very, very well seasoned media operators, and if they have to go against their own son, they will. Because in as much as he's complaining about his family and the fact that they're trying to control him, they are the reason why he's able to live a life to the tunes of hundreds of millions of pounds, and his wife apparently is worth $1 billion and gets a stipend of $1 million as an allowance from her father. So, there's a lot to remember there. The Beckhams are not the royal family, and they will do what they need to do to protect their own.
Writer and broadcaster Esther Kraku, thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you.